The following is a special presentation of HBO Sports.
I can't believe this. I'm the HBO Sports host, and the ABC guy goes first? When did I get so generous?
No, I'm sorry, John. There's nothing I can do. They say they couldn't find you. Well, you're on that goofy bus all the time.
Why do I carry a Mickey Mantle baseball card with me? Don't you think all right-thinking Americans should have a religious artifact on their person at all times?
Brent, you can't wear that jacket.
Jim, it's my network uniform, the blazer.
No home uniforms on this one.
Hey, Pat, can you come on over and get off the phone?
Sorry,
Let me just talk to you fellas a minute.
Okay.
Now, look, first of all, Costas, we don't want any snide remarks about NBC losing baseball.
I'm trying to get over it.
Yeah, and Lampley, you're a real pro. What are you grumbling about where you are in the lineup? Now, look, this is like playing in an all-star game. We're all from separate teams, but we're in the game. We want to win it. So let's go out and have a great show. What do you say, huh? Go get it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, Cowboy.
All right.
Let's get them early.
Hey, Jim, how much you getting paid for this?
You're getting paid?
Gowdy. I'm going to call the play-by-play for you. It looks like a marvelous jump. Going in the end zone. And Jack Nicklaus finishes with 17 under par. We'll be back.
Speaking to you from our CBS anchor studio, ESPN.
The biggest upset in the history of Little League.
Hello, I'm Jim McKay. The first television program I ever worked was a horse race from Pimlico on November 5th, 1947. It was, in fact, the first program ever televised in Baltimore. H.L. Mencken, the city's most gifted man of letters, was watching that day, and he wrote his opinion in his diary that night. Now, the diary wasn't made public until last year, and when it was, I was not really surprised that the famous iconoclast had buried the medium and me while we were still a-borning. He saw no serious future, he said, for the medium or, quote, for the young man who did the commentary. Well, 44 years later, TV sports is still going strong, and it even looks like I've found steady work. Televised sports, of course, today entertains us and influences our lives, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, far more than we realize. This is the first of two shows, the first of two unprecedented hours telling the story of TV sports from the creation until now. All of the networks have joined with HBO to make this possible. And if you notice that anything's missing from this fascinating odyssey, it's because videotape didn't exist in the early years, and the old kinescope recordings have sometimes been lost or simply deteriorated beyond repair. Now, in this show, we'll cover the early days and the growth of TV sports through the years. We'll also recall some memorable mistakes and some of the funny things that have made it such a pleasant journey for those of us who have worked in it since it began. With inexorable logic, we now begin at the beginning with an old friend of mine and yours telling us a story. Storytelling, you know, is our business. Here's Kurt Gowdy.
When I was young, this was precious. Every single week. Can you imagine? You get all the baseball scores in the sporting news. Sure, we had radio, but we didn't get the major league games. The local station did local events. And that's how I got my start, covering a 6-man football game a few blocks from my house. It was cold that day. The vacant lot didn't have any yard lines, and when the players came out of a school bus, they didn't have any numbers on their backs. Well, I had to make up every name in the game. That night, the manager of the radio station called and told me, "Hey, you're a natural." Well, if I was a natural, it was only at improvising play-by-play. Right after World War II, radio was in a war of its own with television. Early on, people gathered in front of appliance store windows to get a peek at this new product that added pictures to the sound and cost a small fortune. So during the World Series, the people were 3 and 4 deep around any window with a TV set. And even back then, it looked like radio's days of dominance were numbered once television went on the air.
Have you ever seen television before?
No, it will be a new experience for us.
What do you think you will like seeing best of all?
Football.
Now you'll be able to see many sports as if you were really there.
The world little noted nor long remember the beginning. At 4 o'clock on a May 17th afternoon, 1939, an NBC experimental station transmitted live a Princeton-Columbia baseball game to about 400 homes.
My impression is that an awful lot of the ball players became hams for at least an hour or two, and there was a tendency for people to leave position and get in the line of flight of the camera.
There was only one camera that day, the only one NBC owned, and the first reviews were awful. The players looked shrunken, about an inch high, and the single camera coverage failed to capture anything other than bunts and infield plays.
I felt relatively famous under the circumstance. I was 19 at the time, and I felt I was a pioneer, but I didn't know in what.
2 weeks later, the first boxing match was televised. 20,000 viewers saw Lou Nova defeat Max Baer. In August, Pro Baseball and Red Barber made television debuts.
There were 2 cameras. I had no connection with the director in the truck outside. There was no monitor. The only way I knew what was being photographed, I didn't know what the picture would be, was to see the red light on one of the 2 cameras and see which one was on and which way the camera was focused.
In the early days, there was no sense of what was to come. Television was a commercial and artistic failure. Sets were a prohibitive $600, and as one viewer said, at least at the ballpark you can see the ball. But after World War II, television exploded. There were 5,000 sets at the end of the war. In 5 years, there would be 10 million.
In the early days, when they first put TV sports on the air, the World Series, the Army-Navy game, the Joe Louis fights, that put TV into the high speed of selling sets. In fact, they couldn't make enough sets at that point.
At first, owning a television set was a luxury, and many watched at a friend's home or at a neighborhood bar or clustered in front of a set placed in the window of the local appliance store. Early sports coverage was limited, the technology more suited to smaller confines. It was a situation that favored boxing and roller derby.
Girls will be girls, and they're one of the reasons for 1950s roller derby mania.
And TV virtually created pro wrestling.
Whammo! Bolo again!
And gave birth to its first star, Gorgeous George, a master of style over substance.
And now, coming into view in our cameras, is the gorgeous one himself, the toast of the coast, the human orchid himself, Gorgeous George. There he goes, another forward head century. George rolls away, starts for the ropes. A razzle-dazzle is set up. George does a reverse. Ooh, Nelly, the man went out of the business.
When I first saw the first wrestling match, I said, hey, I can't play this straight. So I applied a lot of sound effects of it. You know, you've seen enough wrestling matches. The guy throws a wrestler through the air, then the guy bounces back up. So when they're flying through the air, they're on camera. I'm not just... Now, the picture with the sound was tremendously effective.
On his way, he wants to hurry into this. Patrick got his man hurt now.
I did as much as I could to make this sporting event entertaining.
Broadcasters such as Dennis James were free to adopt their own methods, because in those early days, There were no rules. However, in the video age, radio-turned-television announcers had to make adjustments. A radio star before gaining fame in TV, Bill Stern could not rely on old tricks. A young Lindsey Nelson, once Stern's assistant, recalls that Stern, in his radio play-by-play, had no trouble altering facts to cover mistakes.
Bill Stern gave me explicit instructions on what would be expected of me as a spotter. And he said, now we're here to entertain and to inform, and just see that that's what you do. And if you have a man that is down about the 50-yard line and you've been calling him Smith, and you discover that as he progresses to about the 30-yard line, it isn't Smith at all, it's Brown, then you simply have him lateral. And he laterals the ball over, and so then the lateral goes to Brown, and Brown goes in standing up. So that was the Bill Stern technique of broadcasting football games.
The 1947 World Series was the first to be televised. It was significant, too, as radio's last stand. Radio rights were 3 times the cost of TV rights. But it's the radio calls by Red Barber that we remember.
The pinch hit by Harry Lavagetto that deprived Bill Bevins, with only 1 out left, of not only a no-hit game in the World Series, but of the game itself.
No hits by Bevins, 8 2/3 innings. Gianfredo walks off second. Mixes off first. They both ready to go on anything. 2 men out, last of the ninth. The pitch swung on. There's a drive out for the right field corner. Henrik is going back. He can't get it. It's off the wall for a base hit. Here comes the tying run, and here comes the winning run.
And then the other was Gianfredo's catch of DiMaggio's bid for a home run 2 games later.
Outfield deep, round toward left, the infield overshifted. Here's the pitch. Swung on, belted. It's a long one, deep into left center. Back goes Gianfredo. Back. He makes a one-handed catch against the bullpen. Oh, doctor.
Those two have been heard so often. In fact, I listened to them and I said, gee whiz, did I say that?
More about baseball in just a minute, folks. You know, World Series time is antifreeze time, too. And right now is the time to make
Back
sure
in the black and white era, announcers often did the play-by-play and the pour-by-pour.
Pabst Blue Ribbon, finest beer served anywhere. Yowza, yowza.
That's what I want in a cigarette. And I have an idea that's what you want too.
The commercials were live. They were not taped as they are now. For example, beer was a big sponsor. And I knew when the sponsor came to write against your name, what he wanted to hear was not who won or lost the game, but how you pour the beer. And I had a real difficult job in getting my arm set for that perfect pour. They actually sent me to spring training so I could pour the beer right.
The Gillette Cavalcade of Sports is on the air.
The first company to truly understand the business potential of sports TV advertising was Gillette.
Look sharp and feel sharp too. Choose
Sports and TV were headed for a perfect marriage.
From the nation's great sports arenas, television cameras are trained to give you front row seats right at the ringside. Make these great sport events occasions for television parties. By television, you're the referee as the leather pushes meet in the squared circle.
By 1956, about 72% of homes in the U.S. had television. And when Don Larson was on his way to a perfect game in the 1956 World Series, the NBC camera crew at Yankee Stadium needed reminding that they were not only history's bystanders, but an integral part of it.
All of a sudden, I looked behind me in the control room, and every executive in the company was standing behind me with a drained look on their face. And the biggest problem I was having was my cameramen. They were getting mesmerized with Larson. Every time I looked up, every camera was on Larson. And it finally happened, and you couldn't believe it.
Yankee Stadium shivering in its concrete foundation right now. But this ball game is right there on your screen, Mr. Don Larson. And now there is one strike left. Got it! The greatest game ever pitched in baseball history by Don Larson. A no-hitter, a perfect game in a World Series. Retiring 27 Dodgers in a row. The most dramatic baseball game ever played.
It was tough. It was the toughest show I ever did because it got to the crew.
Baseball was able to survive early TV overexposure, but boxing was another matter. By the end of the 50s, TV led to the rapid closing of 250 or 300 big fight clubs.
So remember, mark every Wednesday night on your calendar for exciting fights on television.
At first, pro football lagged behind boxing and baseball. The 1951 Chicago Bears actually had to pay some stations to carry their games.
I think it's rather fascinating that in the year 1956, I appeared on a show called What's My Line. I was the mystery guest, and the panel didn't even have to wear a mask. And that would be like Joe Montana going on a television show without a mask and people having a problem identifying him.
But that was before December 28, 1958, and a football game with everything. Johnny Unitas, a team from the largest TV market. The first NFL title game played to overtime and 30 million watching.
Unitas to Amici. Amici powers in. The Colts win it. They're the NFL champions.
As I joined the Giants in '52, and people would ask you, what do you do? I'd say, well, I'm the Giant announcer. And they'd say, oh, the baseball Giants. I'd say, no, football. So after that '58 sudden death game, you didn't any longer have to explain to people. When you said you were the Giant announcer, they knew exactly it was professional football.
As more households bought sets, Frank Gifford and Chris Schenkel were now among a growing group of household names.
Welcoming you, and your Renault dealer will give you this free gift just for coming in to see the new 60s. A bottle of My Sin perfume by Lanvin for your wife or girlfriend.
Thank you, Fragrant Frank.
In these early days, television was more innocent. The black and white picture a symbol of simplicity. The sets were plain, the presentations casual. For those of us at the beginning, the color and wonder of those times remains fresh in our memories.
It's a hit, it's a homer, look at that ball go. Here comes Joe DiMaggio.
Pro football's place in our Sunday afternoon TV screens was guaranteed after the 1958 NFL Championship. But NBC almost missed the critical play, Alan Amici's winning touchdown in overtime, because fans had accidentally pulled apart a cable in the final minutes. As NBC went to a commercial and tried to restore its signal, there was suddenly further confusion. A spectator was stumbling around in the center of the field, apparently drunk. That additional delay allowed NBC to fix the torn cable, and the game's historic moment, Amici's plunge, was captured live. As for the stumbling fan, well, he reported to work the next day a hero. He wasn't only a convincing drunk, he was also the most valuable business manager that NBC ever had. Those of my generation trained in radio now watched a new influx of talent raised on television. Among them was a gifted young man who began his rapid rise in St. Louis, Missouri, Bob Costas.
Kurt? Once upon a time, a network sports department was a tiny office with a few desks and just a handful of very dedicated people. Until 1961, in fact, ABC really didn't even have a sports department. But as Eisenhower gave way to Kennedy, it seemed the country was possessed by a new vitality and bigger ambitions. ABC introduced Wide World of Sports, and we went places we'd never heard of to watch sports some of us didn't even know anything about. NBC, with the baseball game of the week, showed it had the right touch for the national pastime's subtle rhythms. And CBS captured the bruising and compelling action of NFL football on Sunday afternoons. As rockets lifted into space and rock music lifted many eyebrows, sports television came into its own. Everyone was extending their reach and expanding the lineup.
I'm Jim McKay at Franklin Field in Philadelphia for the 67th annual Penn Relay Carnival on ABC Wide World of Sports.
Those were the inaugural words heard April 29, 1961, of a summer replacement series that became the longest-running anthology show in sports TV.
I wanted a credo. I wanted something that set Wide World of Sports apart.
We were up in the studio, and Roone and I were sitting together and wrote out some words.
Spanning the globe.
Spanning the globe. That's what we do.
Paris in the spring is everything you've ever heard it to be.
This is Alaska, where the caribou lope across the endless snow.
I am going to try to hit a golf ball over the Great Wall of China.
To bring you the constant variety of sport.
Constant variety was a thing that I just, I finally did it because I couldn't think of anything else.
right is nicknamed Orange Juice because he had to give up drinking Sparky.
Say, that's not a bad little snake, is he?
The thrill of victory.
That's it, it's all over. The biggest upset in the history of Little League. We won it! We won it! We won it! Kentucky's over!
The agony of defeat.
There was a lot of thought that went into whether you'd call it the agony of defeat, for example, whether that made winning too important.
A lot of speed in that track. Now, look out! Look at him go! Oh, baby.
And then perhaps the most important line is the human drama of athletic competition. The most important thing in a sporting event is the human being.
Ali now taking advantage as Foreman's head was bent. Foreman down. This is almost incredible. The mind and heart of Julie Moss would not give in. If she couldn't walk, she would crawl, finishing the course.
Getting to know and care about the athlete, seeing behind their highs and lows, this was Wide World's vision, setting a standard for the whole industry.
One of the year's foremost fashion statements isn't from Chanel, Klein, or Gucci, but instead from the fastest woman in the world.
In the morning and at night, during the day, the whole time, I get to see my family.
You know, I enjoy sex as much as Joe Namath. Only I do it with one girl.
From the personal to the pageantry, every fall TV sports follows the tradition and emotion of college football.
Look at the moves by that sensational player. He is going, gone.
Penn State, ranked #1 in the nation. Alabama ranked #2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard. Goodman, he didn't make it.
Look at that cut. O.J. Simpson.
That's all she wrote.
This is for the national championship for Nebraska.
The 1958 NFL championship game was the league's first hit show, and 33-year-old Commissioner Pete Rozelle maintained the momentum.
He was a PR man. He understood selling. He understood marketing. And more than that, he understood how television worked.
As Rozelle knew the value of TV, CBS knew football's potential. In 1956, before anyone else, CBS reserved fall Sunday afternoons for the NFL.
Got away from Adderley.
It is indeed cold in Green Bay.
December 31st, 1967, 13 below, the day that symbolized the Packers. And fortunately for CBS, its cameras were frozen.
We generally agreed, all of us, that it was going to be some kind of a rollout. So Tony Verna, who was directing, said to Herman Lang, who was on the end zone camera, be ready for the rollout. And when he tried to move the camera so he could do that, the cables and the camera were frozen. So he was stuck right on the center, and Jethro Pugh and the great block that really made Jerry Kramer famous.
In 1970, the NFL swallowed the AFL and looked to extend America's weekend. CBS and NBC said no thanks to Monday nights, but ABC's Arledge said yes. And when football came to prime time, the emphasis of ABC's extravagant production was more than sports. It was entertainment. It was showbiz. ABC had more hardware than anyone else and more announcers, 3 of them, including TV's most provocative talent.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Howard Cosell. Welcome to another Monday night of NFL football.
What you've seen tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a truly great football player. Take total personal command of a game.
Howard would add the real journalism that he did, but he would, when he'd get carried away, Don would always puncture his balloon, and people at home loved that.
I didn't know you cared. Yuck.
ABC had altered America's Autumn Mondays. Bowling leagues were rescheduled. Crime was down. Even legends caught Monday Night Fever.
There goes Bo, and nobody catches Bo.
The incomparable Burt Reynolds.
There were curiosities on the field and off it.
I looked around, and there was Ronald Reagan with his arm around John Lennon and explaining American football to John Lennon. And I thought to myself, and this is really what maybe Monday Night Football is all about.
Monday Night Football changed viewing habits, but 9 of the 10 most watched programs in TV history came on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday.
And he may go. He's in there. Still scoring.
The blitz is on for Dallas. The Steelers pick it up. Lynn Swan out there. Caught it. What a catch by Lynn Swan.
Montana. Touchdown, John
The first Super Bowl in 1967 didn't sell out, but it was jointly televised by NBC and CBS.
Touchdown! Jim Taylor behind Thurston and Kramer.
The co-broadcast was a train wreck waiting to happen. At the second half kickoff, CBS was live, but NBC was in commercial.
They kicked off too early. Somebody was running around screaming. I could hear him in my earphone about, hold them down there.
I didn't know what was going on. I remember they kicked off, and I turned around to look at something else, and I looked back, and they were lined up. I didn't know what had happened.
What happened next demonstrated TV's power. For tardy NBC, a second kickoff. And then, my friends, there are the studio shows.
Coming up in the next half hour, Bill McAtee on the new-look Pittsburgh Steelers.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Dries, and here's a roundup of the football scores from around the country.
Number 1 in UPI is Penn State. We've got another barn burner going on at Pauley Pavilion.
All that and more coming up on the NFL Today.
In 1975, the NFL Today on CBS charted an ambitious new course for studio shows. The cast had an ex-sports writer, an ex-jock, and an ex-Miss America.
We were the mod squad of television sports back then. We had the black, the woman, Brent, and then we had the Greek. And I think it was popular because there was great chemistry between all of us.
Keep on smiling, Phyllis. You're much prettier than Brent or Earl.
Phyllis, you are absolutely right. It is the age of Star Wars in professional football. What in the world is that?
The prevailing production principle was achieving the right blend of features, updates, analysis, and humor.
The Detroit job, he didn't get it. He will try to kick, you know what, out of Detroit.
All right. You turn, you fire the football, you say, rocket! Rocket!
Larry Bird. Follows his own shot. Oh, what a play!
The dazzling play of a few shining stars helped bring the NBA into its own on television.
Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move! Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has given the Los Angeles Lakers a victory.
I remember my dad used to say, Curtis, someday we're going to Chicago or St. Louis and we're going to watch a Major League Baseball game.
Robinson kind of shaking up the ballpark a bit as he dances down off third. Robbie's coming to the plate. The throw to Berra. He steals it.
In the 20th century's first half, big league baseball for many was at a distance, played mostly in the Northeast. Starting in 1947, NBC offered everyone a ticket.
In the early days, your aim was just to stay on the air. You'd set up emergency procedures on how to cover a baseball game with 3 cameras, with 2 cameras, and 1. Because, you know, in a single baseball game, you'd be down to 1 at a certain time and 2 at others.
Stand by 8, take 8.
Harry Coyle began by lugging cable. He would become baseball's finest director, a central figure in NBC's definitive coverage of the national pastime.
Stay with him all the way around. Take 5, stand by 1, take 1.
At the 1988 World Series, intuition and preparation paid off for Coyle and NBC.
There's Gibson.
We made a situation and put in a procedure that we were to shoot every movement that he did. We certainly turned out to be very lucky, but it was planned.
And he walked it. And look who's coming up. The game right now is at the plate. High fly ball into right field. She is gone!
CBS Sports presents The Masters.
Arnold Palmer is the Masters champion of 1960.
Since 1958, the Masters has been the prize jewel of CBS.
By a man accustomed to performing the incredible. How's that look?
ESPN, the Total Sports Network.
College kids look at me and say, you mean you didn't have ESPN when you were at college? What did you do?
Welcome, everyone, to the ESPN Sports Center.
In 1979, the lineup expanded to fit any sports fanatic's appetite with the birth of ESPN.
Side spin, swinging that racket.
From China's national game to the body bouncing of Australian rules football, ESPN tried just about anything to find its niche in sports TV.
I was asked more than twice, Oh, the Spanish network, Espanol, ESPN. No hablo, no, we're the sports network. Oh, no, the Spanish station, I watch it all the time.
5 seconds. Inside. He scores!
With a bounty of college basketball and Sports Center. With live NFL draft coverage.
National Football League draft.
And with historic America's Cup broadcasts, ESPN rapidly upgraded, and in 1987, it reached full TV adulthood.
This is a very big night here at ESPN as we welcome the National Football League to cable television for the very first time.
I didn't believe myself when I was saying it. We threw to this game, and my goodness, it was indeed the Chicago Bears and the Miami Dolphins. Not facsimiles thereof, but the actual teams. And I went, my goodness, look what we've done.
TV spread a malady that was once confined to college campuses. It was known as March Madness.
Let me tell you what we plan to show you tonight.
Into Walton. He can't score. Turnovich. Myers. Shoemate. It's all over.
Smart takes the shot. And the Hoosiers with 3 seconds. Go ahead.
Wittenberg. Oh, that's a long ways.
They won it.
There's nothing that I can think of where the impact of television has been as great as the Olympics.
The hockey game between Sweden and Germany. For
yes, CBS's Walter Cronkite hosted the first televised Olympics, the 1960 Winter Games in Squaw Valley. Later that year, the Summer Olympics from Rome were hosted in a New York studio by McKay, then with CBS.
Videotape of today's great race has just arrived at Idlewild Airport here in New York. Let's try to switch now to our mobile unit at Idlewild.
The rights fee, $400,000 for Rome 1960, is $400 million for Barcelona 92. TV made it happen by making the games a primetime winner.
It's Wilbur Rudolph leading all the way. Jutta Hyman moving into second place.
So Bruce Jenner has kicked the world record in the decathlon sideways.
Bernard Bruce is sitting at the bottom of first place. Oh. Homer almost went down, Frank.
Yes.
She has done the best vault of her life.
And to make sense of it all, the TV hosts, the storytellers.
What I tried to do is to always tell a story that's very much like a play, except that this is a play that writes itself.
Dolabud has the lead when they cross
In this play, a young runner's mistake lingers for all time. On this stage, a young man who defies cancer and wins gold becomes an international symbol of hope. And could Shakespeare give us a better story than the diver who doesn't let a brush with mortality extinguish his will to win?
Yes. What an athlete.
The Olympics, singular in their grandeur, provoke extraordinary performances from those competing and from those who broadcast it to you. TV, as in the case of the Olympics, hasn't just popularized events, but virtually financed them. And its influence is deep and continuing. New York police, for example, reported that after Monday Night Football first came on the air, arrests dropped 16% on Monday nights. And 3 years ago, inmates at an Idaho prison were so upset by rotten Super Bowl reception, they threatened a riot unless allowed to dig a trench and repair the cable. But with forever spiraling rights fees now seemingly out of control and oversaturation of the TV sports market an undeniable fact, we're left to wonder, is TV's impact always beneficial? Whatever world follows, sports broadcasting is now an integral part of America's daily diary. And one of its distinctive voices is a contemporary of mine, Jim Lampley.
A broadcaster is in a position of unusual responsibility, a responsibility that cannot be casually dismissed. You're expected to maintain the highest levels of professionalism, to act with integrity, to observe the public trust, to keep the airwaves sacred. For to do otherwise, to abuse the special relationship between the broadcaster and the viewer, is to put yourself way, way out of bounds.
It's Thanksgiving morning, 1985. Ahmad is in Detroit for the traditional Thanksgiving game.
Bobby, I got something I want you to do for me.
Now, I suspect that something is going on, but I'm not 100% sure.
There's a lady that I'm in love with, and you know the lady as Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show.
And literally, I saw the guy begin to sweat like Albert Brooks in broadcast news. I mean, it was pouring down. He was drenched.
Now, this is in all serious now. I would like to send this message to her. Felicia, would you marry me? Would you get back to me, Bobby, on that answer?
People were handing him Kleenexes from the wings, and he was patting at his face, and I recall a little clump of the Kleenex stuck on his chin. You know, he really looked like a man floundering. And she was working the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for NBC. We went out and found her, brought her back in at halftime. You'll be happy to learn that Felicia Ayres Allen, Claire Huxtable of The Cosby Show, is ready with her answer. Felicia?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
I'm cool.
I feel like some sort of cross between Chuck Woolery and Bob Eubanks.
I guess in my best Dick Enberg impression, oh my.
And there he stands, all aflame, waiting, still waiting. Why doesn't he go?
1981 champion, Jerry Payton.
Girls play a nice game of tennis for girls, but when they get out there on a court with a man, even a tired old man of 55, they're going to be in big trouble.
We had rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and as our procedure is when we start a game, I talk a little bit, and then Madden answers a question that I ask him, and then I talk some more.
Either as to who
while he is answering my second question, I get up and get ready to start the broadcast. With the audience that we had, I turned around and started to put on my headset, and he's sitting on it. And at that time, he weighed a lot more than he weighs now. And I'm tugging on the cord, and he's talking about what he thinks about the game, and I can't get to my headset because he's sitting on it.
He knows what he has to do, and he's gotten that across to his team.
How can I be interested in football? My hair looks like this.
Well, lots of men have hair problems. The cold weather really dries out your hair.
And the hot indoors makes your hair here hard to manage too, doesn't it?
You've got to be kidding.
It'll be a long day. That was the General Robert Montgomery night. Everybody's ready to go. He's ready to go. I'm ready to go. And you're ready to go.
You're looking at George Foreman, the former heavyweight champion of the world, who today will be fighting not one, but 5 different fighters, scheduled for 3 rounds apiece.
But I don't believe he's going to whoop 5 men tonight.
And I don't think you believe he's fighting 5 good fighters either. So let's hit it 12.
They're not the greatest, but 5 men can add up.
ABC had hired Muhammad Ali to offer analysis, but Ali abandoned the role and created chaos by mercilessly taunting Foreman.
Lay on the rope! Lay on the rope! Come up! On the rope! Hold on! Come up!
There he goes, down again, 3rd time down. This is an absurd scene. And Ali's presence here has to have something to do with it. I told you this is the weirdest occasion you'll ever want to see. Look at that. That's hardly professional, is it? And so this afternoon cannot have a wholesome aspect in George Foreman's boxing career. So all in all, it was a down day for boxing. It was a charade, a carnival, not boxing.
That's not Frank. That's not Frank. That is an imposter. Get him off the track. This happens in Bush League marathons. This doesn't happen in an Olympic marathon.
This looks like a fake in the Olympic Games. They ought to throw him out.
I wonder what Frank is thinking if he sees that guy up ahead. Look at his face. He looks worried. He's looking at the guy. Frank, it's a fake, Frank.
Directors will do anything for better camera angles, trimming tree branches at golf tournaments if necessary. The same director might also exaggerate the cost to pad an expense account. But Joe Assetti told the tallest tale, seeking reimbursement for eliminating a forest that never was.
I was at the end of my string of coming up with creative ways to make it look like I'd spent money legally on this trip. So I put in for trimming branches $150 or something like that. The business manager, when he saw it, said, "Hey, I got you. There's a pan of the course, and there's nothing on that course. There's no shrubs, there's no trees, there's nothing over 2 inches tall on the course other than grass." And I told him, "Well, what are you complaining about? For $150, he did a great job."
The lights, the
party's over. They say that all good things must end.
Howdy, fans. Peter Buck here to lay some facts on you about hockey, the world's fastest team sport.
The first time NBC gave us the silent treatment was the last time. Executive producer Don Ohlmeyer hatched the idea when faced with a lackluster late-season game.
And so Ohlmeyer said, well, let's try something different to attract attention to the game. And indeed, it worked. He decided to have a game where there were no announcers.
We have just completed from the Orange Bowl, to the best of our knowledge, the only half of NFL football ever to be done without the benefit of announcers. If you find yourselves wondering what's been going on, then maybe we have to work out the kinks.
Boom, we cross him. The left goes to the right goes to the left. This guy crosses here, he crosses here. They have no idea where we are, who we are, where we're coming from, or who we're throwing to.
It scares me, but I understand it completely.
Hello.
Hello.
Pete Rose?
Yes, sir.
This is Ronald Reagan.
How you doing?
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you. I've had as much trouble getting this line, or a lot. I think I had to wait longer than you did to break the record.
Well, we were going to give you 5 more minutes, and that was it.
Here they come. Waltrip trying to slingshot.
It is right now a 3-country race.
Whatever the race, a broadcaster's worst nightmare is calling the wrong winner.
It did happen to me, and it happened in front of 85 million people.
It was at the 1988 Summer Olympics.
One of the classic finals in the Olympics. Men's 800 meters. All eyes drawn to Saeed Ouida.
Cruz looks strong. Here comes Ouida. And Kiprotich.
Kiprotich takes the lead. Ouida will not catch him. Nixon Kiprotich. With Joaquin Cruz coming in second.
I did not discover it until they had the replay of the event, and then we knew, and then I knew that I had made the all-time world blooper reel.
But Kiprotich pushes through. Cruz dies. It was great tactics by the Brazilians.
We have blown this call. Gentlemen, we were wrong. That is Paul Airy of Kenya. We made the mistake of the Olympic Games. My mistake, nobody else's.
There have been others who've made big mistakes at big events. Clem McCarthy, considered the finest horse racing broadcaster of his day, botched the 1947 Preakness. McCarthy called Jet Pilot the winner, but ironically, first across the finish line was a horse named Faultless. Later, McCarthy met up with Bill Stern, a broadcaster given to invention, as we saw earlier. If Stern realized he had the wrong running back carrying the ball, he'd fabricate a lateral to the player who had the ball all along. When Stern ribbed McCarthy about his horse race call mistake, McCarthy was ready. Well, Bill, he said, you can't lateral a horse. From our review of less than great moments, we move now to the enduring events, the ones forever stored in our national memory, and a broadcaster who has stylishly given America his eyewitness account of more than a few compelling moments, Brent Musburger.
Jim, the compelling moments in sports television, these are the images you remember with such clarity so completely, it's almost as if they happened a day ago. These are the chosen few sporting events that we all share, frames of unequaled action that still sustain us, like that night in Atlanta, early in the baseball season, when a quiet man of so much dignity and such professional consistency did the Babe one better.
Balls it deep, deep. It is good. He did it. He did it. Henry Aaron is the all-time home run leader now.
And then there was the self-made genius of self-promotion who suspended boxing laws temporarily and turned a brutal sport into a ballet.
It's over. Muhammad Ali, with an 8th-round knockout, recaptures the heavyweight championship of the world, the second in history to do it.
And there was the February at Lake Placid, when all the world's skeptics were briefly silenced because of a team that defied reason.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Chills and thrills. We've been favored with so many in 50 years of sports television history.
it down. Caught by Boston College. I don't believe it. It's a touchdown. The Eagles win it.
Namath has not been bashful this week. He's come down here to Miami, and he has said that the Jets are going to win. He doesn't even predict it. He said, I guarantee a Jet victory. Namath firing. A great grab by Sauer.
I knew the game wore on. I was sitting in on history, but this was going to change the entire future and structure of pro football.
The Jets beating the Baltimore Colts 16-7 gives the AFL the first Super Bowl championship.
Sam, we've got a trophy dashed to the finish line. I've never seen anything like it. There's time to catch him if he can do it. No one has ever seen this before in Indianapolis. Can he make a move at the finish? He's making a move. No, not quite. Gordon Johnson has won the Indianapolis 500. He won it by less than a car length.
You had the greatest heroic moment possibly in the history of baseball. What will it do to you, Bobby?
Well, I don't know, Howard. I'm glad it happened. It was a lot of fun that day.
I'd like to win out to this one. Racker throws. There's a long strike. It's going to be, I believe, the Giants from the pellet. The Giants from the pellet. The Giants from the pellet. The Giants from the pellet.
Of course, it kind of put me up on a pinnacle, you might say, and I'm afraid I wasn't able to stay there due to the fact that I didn't have the ability to stay there.
Here's Lowe with a minute to go in the game. Lowe cleared to the blue line, held in by Duchesne. Duchesne's pass in deep to Taylor. The Gretzky scores! He's done it! Wayne Gretzky, the great one, has become the greatest of them all. The leading scorer in the history of the National Hockey League.
Secretariat has opened a 22-length lead. He is going to be the Triple Crown winner. Here comes Secretariat to the wire. An unbelievable, an amazing performance. He hits the finish 25 lengths in front.
And a full count on Mookie Wilson. He can win it with a hit. Ray Knight's at second base. Here's the pitch to Mookie Wilson. Winning run at second. Ground ball to first. It is a run, an error. An error by Buckner. The winning run scores. The Mets win it 6-5 with 3 in the 10th.
And it's a fair start. And it is Raymond Turr with a start. It is Ben Johnson with a start. Can Carl catch him? No! It's Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson does it again. Unbelievable! 9-7-9!
Don Landry is 6 yards away from his 6th Super Bowl.
And they tell me I had this look in my eyes, this crazed look. My God, they're going in. I don't believe it. They're going in.
And of course, for the upstart 49ers, they're 6 yards away from Pontiac. 3rd and 3. Montana looking, throwing in the end zone. Caught it!
He gets it out deep, and Havlicek steals it over the stand zone. Havlicek stole the ball. It's all over. It's all over.
This could be the highlight of the compulsory event. She is one of the technically strongest gymnasts that I've ever seen. Oh, look at that amplitude. Ooh. She's really moving well. Another handstand. Look at that. Right to the handstand. Oh, she's beautiful. The crowd loves it. A perfect 10. The first time I have ever seen that in Olympic competition. A perfect 10.
There's the windup. Fastball hit deep to right.
A 63-yard field goal. He'll set a National Football League record in addition to winning the game. I don't believe this. It's good! I don't believe it! The field goal attempt was good from 63 yards away! It's incredible!
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson. It's over. Mike Tyson has been
2-1 pitch. There's a fly ball down to left. Waiting is Jones. The Mets are the world champions. Gary Koosman being mobbed. Look at this scene.
Greg LeMond prepares to start the race. Quite simply, he must go faster than most think he can. Lawrence Fignon approaches the Arc de Triomphe. The key time is 27:47. The magic time is gone. And that means the yellow jersey for Lawrence Fignon has been lost. Greg LeMond won in the smallest margin ever recorded in this race, 8 seconds.
Lawrence Taylor, number 56, right there. Carson is number 53. But it's Taylor over Carson, slamming. And you see the right knee, the right foot. And I don't believe Lawrence Taylor would have reacted that way unless Theismann is really hurt.
Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score. So the Oakland A's take. I'll tell you what, we're having an
Well, folks, that's the greatest open in the history of television, bar none.
In a way, I felt like the captain of a ship. I mean, it was up to me to communicate to people what I could see, what I knew was taking place.
You're looking now at a shot of the cantilever section of the Bay Bridge. That apparently is where the major damage has been done.
I remember thinking, don't overstate anything.
Everybody is exhaling.
Make sure you've got your facts correct.
All I can say is that very, very fortunately for some 60,000 people at Candlestick Park, the epicenter was not that close to the ballpark.
This would be one of the greatest upsets in the history of championship games of the NCAA tournament.
Rodnax and a quick timeout after the field goal.
That's it. There will be no dynasty. Villanova has done it.
Islanders number 10, Hennick. Shoots Tonelli. Here's Tonelli with Nystrom. The pass to Nystrom is good.
And then on one unfortunate day, I had the biggest news story in the world in my lap.
All this scenes of what happened yesterday at the Olympic Games in Munich.
I remember telling him before a commercial, but I really confirmed it just as he said it.
We've just gotten the final word. You know, when I was a kid, my father used to say, our greatest hopes and our worst fears are seldom realized. Our worst fears have been realized tonight. They've now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
Those of us in sports television know we travel without a map, on a road that turns without notice. Munich came without warning, but then it's almost always that way in our business. We're all accidental tourists, tested but always enticed by the utter unpredictability of the events we cover. This all began for me while I was still playing football for the New York Giants, and it was very accidental. CBS Radio was calling my roommate, Giant quarterback Charlie Connolly. There was an audition later that day for a sports show. I told CBS that Charlie was in the shower and he'd have to call back. But just before I hung up, the caller wondered what I was doing later that afternoon. Well, Charlie didn't get the job, and I found a second career. What you've seen in the last hour is the work of thousands and thousands of extraordinarily dedicated men and women. Those of us in front of the camera, and this can never be overstated, are but a small piece of what is always a collaborative effort. HBO Sports thanks ABC, NBC, and CBS for their untiring cooperation in this project. And now for Jim McKay, Kurt Gowdy, Bob Costas, Jim Lampley, and Brent Musburger, I'm Pat Summerall. Join us soon for Game 2, Play-by-Play, a history of sports television.
This is Mel Allen saying thank you and good night from Milwaukee.
There's a long drive. That one is going way up. It is
47-yard kick. Here it is. It's good.
Bill Mills fights his way through, and he wins it, breaking the Olympic record. That winds it up, ladies and gentlemen, from Denver. Bud Palmer saying so long. Thanks for watching.
What a performance. Peggy Fleming.
Jim Kennel leading the race. Ryan.
He fell down. Jim Ryan is down the track. His effort may be over.
Tagging is Harrelson. Will he gamble? He's coming. Here's the ball. And he is off at home plate.
And fans, we'll see you on the Falstaff Game of the Week. So long, everybody.
So long, everybody.
Four in a row for Navratilova. Say we're back. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can't. The ball flipped forward as well. It's a wild scramble. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most absolutely impossible dream of a play. Bale hits him. He slides. They're hitting the wall. They're out of it.
Now this red barb is saying, I hope you have a good time.
1 second on the clock.
Open, Yannick Noah.
Mark Spitz has 7 gold medals. He's won everything that he had hoped to win.
There's Rogers at the outside, pitching back to Gardner. And Gardner's got no place to go and no one to pitch it to. And he's still on his feet. Game's not over yet. And here's another man. Flag is down. A flag is down. As Kevin Boone takes it into the end zone, we have chaos.
I hope you'll be with us next Sunday night along about this same time when we try to bring some more stars into your home, sports stars of every kind of sport. And if you enjoyed it tonight, I think you will be. Anyways, along about this same time, if you'll be there, we'll be here, and we'll see you all over again. Until then, this is Bill Stern saying good night.
Look back at the last 50 years of sports television as HBO presents a one-of-a-kind television event, Play-by-Play, a history of sports television, next.
Sergeant Nick Pulofsky's got problems. His partner's been killed by a bloodthirsty band of car thieves. And now this.
Nick, that was your new partner.
You're kidding me. They're on the trail of killers.
This is where the fun starts.
And the rookie is learning.
Good work, kid. Now read them their rights.
But when they kidnap Nick, he gets all fired up.
Fasten your seatbelt.
Clint Eastwood, Charlie Sheen, The Rookie. Premiere Sunday on HBO.
Simply the best choice on TV. HBO.
The following is a special presentation of HBO Sports.
Well, John, I'm glad to hear you liked the first show. You want me to do what? No, I'm too old to play touch football, and I have no desire to get muddy with you. There is another show. I'll see you soon. Good to talk to you. Bye-bye. Hey, Jim, did you see today's college scoreboard?
Let's start with the top 10, Pat. Number 1 ranked Florida State thrashed Syracuse en route to the Seminoles' potential first national championship ever. Out in the Southwest Conference, a record-breaking performance for David Klingler of Houston. 12 touchdown passes in Houston's 93-14.
Hold it, Jim. Do you always talk like that?
So, the agony of defeat, that was yours? Mine. Mind if I use it?
Yes.
All right. How about up close and personal?
Mine. Can't have it.
Jim, what the hell am I going to say in Barcelona?
Yeah, in the second show, any fishing, hunting, anything like that?
I see football. I see a lot of my stuff. Sorry, Kurt, I don't see much from that wildlife category.
mean, all those hours and the American sportsman and my hip waders freezing my rear end off. Come on, there's got to be something.
All right, guys, stand by. One more show to go. Game 2, 30 seconds there.
Okay, let's huddle up here. Come on. Lampley, you're all right. Your tie's all right.
Yeah, it's okay.
Now, before I start, any other comments you have?
Kurt, how about this? You are looking live at the history of sports television.
That's not going to work because we're on tape. Now, look, this is the second game of the doubleheader. Let's go for a sweep. What do you say, huh?
All right.
All right.
You'd have made a great coach.
You mean there was actually a time when there were no TV sports critics?
Oh, yeah.
You mean you just did your job?
That's all we did. That's right.
Nobody cared.
Well, that's unbelievable, huh?
It is a fair ball. It's by Buckner.
The Gillette Cavalcade of Sports is on the air.
One out there. What a catch by Winslow.
We at CBS Sports are starting something new this year.
Is the master champion of 1960.
Now, mister, I didn't know you cared.
The New York Jets are the world champions.
Lindbergh, it's a long way.
How about that?
Jumping. Robbie's coming to the plate. The third affair. He steals it.
So your wife or girlfriend? Thank you, Fragrant Frank. You're welcome.
I think we see Willis coming out. There he comes right now.
I don't believe it. The Eagles win it.
Hello, I'm Jim McKay. The Broadway Theater will always be able to present a live play better than television. Hollywood will always be able to make a better movie for us to see 10 times life-size on the screen of our local theater. But there's one thing that television can do better than any device ever invented by mankind. And that is to show us right now something that's taking place far away, the ending of which is unknown. It might be a war or an election night or some other engrossing story, but on a continuing, regularly scheduled basis, nothing fits those criteria as perfectly as sports. That's why we're taking your time with 2 shows, this is the second, to tell you the story of sports television, how it began, what it is today, and just about everything in between. Now, in this program, we'll see how television has come to bring us the best seat in the house, how it has sometimes stumbled on its way and made us laugh or maybe become angry. And we'll meet some of the people who have sat behind the mic and told us the stories. One of the best through all these years has been a fine athlete turned sports commentator, Pat Summerall.
It was August 1939. Red Barber was doing the first Major League Baseball game ever televised, and this is what it was like. Barber sat in a stadium chair in the second deck of Brooklyn's Ebbets Field, right among the fans. And there, in the midst of the crowd, between innings, Barber did his own commercials. At one point, he put together a bowl of Wheaties with sliced banana and the required amount of milk, finishing it all by telling his rather small audience, "That's the breakfast of champions." Barber was among those broadcasters who watched 2 ages collide. Radio had arrived in 1920, and its reign lasted a brief 25 years until television, following World War II, took over. TV's potential was immediately evident. Voices now had faces. New stars were born. But as in radio, the best had a sense of the moment. We knew what it was like to be sitting right there at the game as long as they were behind the mic.
Hello, everybody. I'm Keith Jackson. Good afternoon, baseball fans. This is your old partner, Dizzy Dean.
Good afternoon, everyone.
For half a century now, their faces and voices have entered our home.
Good evening. I'm Bryant Gumbel.
Their familiar phrases have become part of the language. These are the broadcasters, the men and women behind the mic.
Hello, everybody. This is the old redhead, Red Bob.
With a voice described as a quiet stream and an insistence on preparation and accuracy, Red Barber lent a dignity to his craft.
Ball game in this series, just as tight as a brand new pair of shoes on a rainy day.
His broadcasting philosophy was simple, to report.
Mantle hits a high fly ball. It's deep left center field. It's way out there. It's way out there, and it is in there. I mean it's in there.
The voice of the Reds, Dodgers, and then the Yankees. Over the course of 33 seasons, Barber conveyed many of baseball's biggest moments. Yet he knew it was the little things that mattered.
I would receive postcards and letters from people saying, I tuned in and you didn't give the score for 5 minutes. You didn't give the score for 8 minutes. And I thought to myself, well, there must be some validity to this. I haven't got a stopwatch inside my head. So I got a 3-minute egg timer. And when the sand ran out, I inverted the egg timer and gave the score and just kept right on going. And it was as simple as that. So nobody could say for years and years that I didn't give the score often enough.
And it is 1-0 favor the Dodgers.
Unbelievable! Steele stopped the fight with fewer than 5 seconds to go.
And there it is. A new Masters record in history here at Augusta.
Go crazy, folks! Go crazy! It's a home run by the Wizard!
Divac fumbled it, recovered. Yes! And it counts!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, once again. Welcome to Spotlight on
For Bill
Sports.
Stern, among the first TV-created celebrities, a broadcast was an opportunity to exercise the imagination.
He was a dramatist in every way. He made the games exciting, entertaining. He was one of the all-time greats.
This is one of the greatest comebacks in golf history, probably the most dramatic of all time, for it represents for Ben Hogan, out of a hospital bed into the championship of the United States. A year ago this time, there were those who said Ben would never play again.
He's got it. There he is. Ben's the new golf champion. Look at the crowd go up to get him.
Bill Stern was known for his ability to manufacture events. He had a Friday night sports program in which he told these far-out stories. He told them as truth.
You're looking at the man right now, ladies and gentlemen, whose story is the most fabulous, the most unbelievable of all the annals of boxing history. 1 year before he won the heavyweight championship of the world, he was flat broke. So broke that he lived in New Jersey at the time. He had 25 cents to his name. He spent the 25 cents to take a ferry boat across the Hudson River.
Stern's inventive ways were still absorbing, and in the sleepy 50s, all was forgiven.
I'm Jim Simpson with Sandy Koufax and Mickey Mantle.
Good afternoon, I'm Bud Balmer.
I'm Gail Gardner.
Frank Gifford back in our studios in New York.
And Joe Garagiola, that's me.
Well, to show you sort of how long I've been in this business, I teach on occasion here now at the University of Tennessee. And on my first day in class, a young lady down front said, Mr. Nelson, when you were in school here, did you major in radio and television? I said, no. And she said, well, why didn't you? I said, because television hadn't been invented and radio was brand new.
Few have a resume as rich as Nelson's. There were 17 seasons of the New York Mets, 21 seasons of NFL, 13 of Notre Dame football, and 25 Cotton Bowls.
Houston 34, Notre Dame 28. Montana going. And it's a touchdown. A touchdown taken at the corner.
We're proud to have you with us.
The soothing Knoxville accent set Nelson apart, but so did the 350 outrageously patterned jackets that made him an audio and visual delight.
My wife and I were on the way to the theater one night, and there was a men's shop, which is no longer there, Phil Kronfeld's at 49th and Broadway. And so I stopped in there and I said to Phil, show me all the jackets you have you can't sell. And he said, all right, and he disappeared and he came back and he had 7 of the wildest jackets you ever saw. Horrible, just awful, offensive, which is what I wanted. That's the way you get attention.
Ben Johnson does it again. Unbelievable. Jordan with 2 seconds to go puts it up and scores. Michael Jordan has won it for Chicago. There's a drive way back. It might be. It could be. Oh,
11 o'clock in the morning in Mexico City, and I'm Chris Schenkel.
There were 9 Olympics.
Helmut Recknagel uncorked 2 beauties.
This is a game that I think has more build-up, more excitement.
He's called more than 600 football games.
30-yard attempt is up and good.
The Pro Bowlers Tour has had no other national voice.
All right, here it is. Right lane.
We have been listening to Chris Schenkel's direct, sweetly pitched presentations for 40 years, from Beijing to Bronco busting.
You've just seen Miss
But closer to home, at the 1971 Indy 500, native son Schenkel came close to death.
So I thought, at one point, like in 1971, my best contribution would be to describe what it was like to be in the pace car. We brought him to the line, and Eldon Palmer missed his braking flag that he'd practiced with for a whole month because it was covered by people, which none of us thought about.
Oh, look, the pace car has crashed into a photographer's stand. We can't see what has happened down there. The pace car, out of control, crashed into a photographer's stand. People fell out as if a corn crib had been opened, just tumbling down on the track.
We were going 135. No one was killed. There were injuries, but we had a few, and we overcame them all, and it was exciting, I will say that.
Dick Hearn saying to you that bedlam reigns tonight in Los Angeles, California.
Welcome to another Saturday afternoon of Major League Baseball here on CBS. I'm Greg Gumbel.
Hi, I'm Don Crickey. This is Jane Chastain.
Good evening, everyone, everywhere. This is Ted Husing speaking from Yankee Stadium in New York City.
In 1940, he became the voice of baseball's royalty, the Yankees. Soon, Allen was simply crowned the voice of America's pastime.
Out to left field, Woodling getting under it. And the Yankees are champions. And look at Barrow. Piggyback riding Bob Cazella.
His rich, energetic, southern-tinged speech was so familiar, Allen could do without introductions.
I remember once getting off an airplane in Omaha, Nebraska, and I got into a cab, and all I said to him was the name of the hotel, and his head went around on a swivel. That threw me. Saying 2 words and somebody recognizing your voice. I recognized, for the first time, I think, really recognized how powerful the medium was.
How about that?
You are looking live.
Play figures to double and triple jab. And it's going to go to the backstop. Here comes Mitchell to score the tying run.
Ernest Biner fumble the ball, and Denver has recovered. Oh, my!
The American Sportsman. And this is the first of 4 one-hour color specials on hunting and fishing. Can you imagine paying me to go hunting and fishing and being with great guys, Bing Crosby, Phil Harris, Bill Conrad, and get to fish in the best and hunt in the best places in the world? Can you imagine getting paid for that? I did. And for a boy that grew up in Wyoming as an outdoorsman, had a great fly fishing father, this was a dream come true. To hunt as a boy?
As a boy in faraway Cheyenne, he had a simple ambition, to see a big league game. Later, Kurt Gowdy announced all the big games.
Super Bowl 13 is the best Super Bowl game ever played.
And they're going to throw. Oh, he's got it wide open. Drop. Veteran Jackie Smith. And he let a sure touchdown pass get away.
I still don't see how the Mets ever beat the Baltimore Orioles.
And there's a drive to right center. Swoboda comes up with it. The tag at third. Here comes Frank Robinson. The game is tied.
I think the most memorable event of my career, I did Super Bowl III. Unitas again. The pass to Richardson. He has the ball. The game is over. The New York Jets are the world champions. They have upset the Baltimore Colts and beat them handily here today. When somebody looks back at Kurt Gowdy, I hope they'll say the guy was a great pro.
Good afternoon. I'm Pat Summerall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Costas.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ray Scott.
We'll have all that and more.
When I was 12 years old, I knew that I either wanted to be a reporter on a newspaper
or I wanted to be in radio, there being no television at that time.
I'm Jim McKay, speaking to you from Lenin Stadium in Moscow.
Thanks to ABC's Wide World of Sports, Jim McKay found out how wide the world truly is. His luggage has logged 4.5 million miles, and McKay's broadcasting and athletic versatility have been tested. But there was no test like Munich, September the 5th, 1972, when McKay had to report a story that was almost beyond words.
And I had one thing consciously in my mind almost from the beginning, and that was there was a young man in there named David Berger, an Israeli weightlifter, who was from Shaker Heights, Ohio. And I knew that his parents and his family were watching at home, and that I would probably be the guy who would have to tell them whether their son was alive or dead.
They've now said that there were 11 hostages. 2 were killed in their rooms yesterday morning. 9 were killed at the airport tonight. They're all gone.
At the ABC Broadcast Center the following morning, McKay found a telegram in his box.
It was a cable, and it said words to the effect, "You were a credit to yourself and your network and your business today, signed Walter Cronkite."
Behind the net to Sanderson. Orr! On the Orr!
There they go. Struck him out. Ball game is over.
The bear has come out of hibernation.
Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Howard Cosell made news as often as he reported it. More than a broadcaster, he was a cultural phenomenon.
What Howard did was a column on the air.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Howard Cosell.
He gave his opinions.
It was a charade, a carnival, not boxing.
He gave controversial statements.
I wonder if that referee understands that he is constructing an advertisement for the abolition of the very sport that he's a part of.
And he elicited news from people.
Tommy, would you explain to the people of America exactly what you did and why you did it?
He had sort of a compelling personality.
Okay. Let's go back to Christopher Schenkel in the booth.
Well, you can see that Howard Cosell is truly loved wherever he goes.
Whether you liked him or didn't like him, you paid attention to him.
What a football game this turned out to be!
Even the great Ali conceded when faced with Cosell's swift tongue.
I'll get you in Africa, you and George. I got something for you both in Africa. You take me laugh. I don't mean to scare you, Howard. I'm just joking.
I'm terrified.
Cosell was a journalist with entertainment instincts. Sometimes overbearing, often caring. No one will tell it like Howard ever again.
Howard Cosell reporting from Maple Leaf Gardens.
All of the announcers you've just seen are the descendants of the father of American sports broadcasting, Graham McNamee. Once, while broadcasting the Rose Bowl for the NBC radio network, under orders, McNamee read an opening script that told his listeners of a beautiful sunlit New Year's afternoon in Pasadena, with blue skies overhead and purple mountains hugging the Rose Bowl. However, on this particular day, the blue skies were gray with pounding rain. Today's broadcasters may not always manage to tell it like it is, but with TV, they can't tell it like it isn't. In fact, these days, it seems it's impossible to get away with anything. And the modern broadcaster, for that matter, must be perceptive and precise. Talents demonstrated by Jim Lampley.
After further review, play stands as called. Touchdown.
Yeah, that's the right call. Over the years, television has dramatically enhanced its coverage of sporting events. With the latest audio technology, we are now privy to conversations we would never hear at the game. With an array of graphics, we learn pertinent facts, and with cameras stationed almost everywhere, it's like having a dozen pairs of eyes. Being at the stadium is its own special experience. But when you're at home, in your living room, watching it all on television, sometimes that's the best seat in the house.
I want to look over the skier's shoulder and see what he's looking at. It's an awesome sight. And my technical guy said, can't be done.
And something was in slow motion. And it occurred to me that We ought to be able to do that.
The New York Marathon is an impossible event. Somebody said, you can't do the marathon.
I love the sound. And I thought, gee, wouldn't it be great if we can do that with television?
The visionaries. They get credit for giving us the best seat in the house.
And then with that
the slow motion replays, the handheld cameras, the You Are There audio.
We only got 3 minutes! Yeah! Come on, baby!
Someone had to invent it, starting with basics like coast-to-coast transmission.
Well, we won't go any further, Albie, because unfortunately our coaxial cable doesn't carry us much further west.
And now, courtesy of the coaxial cable, we're going to switch right
By 1951, the coaxial cable linked east and west coasts. And in 1962, when the Telstar satellite was put into orbit, we were connected to the world.
We had intended to take you at this time to Washington, where the President's weekly news conference is about to begin. But because of early acquisition at Andover, we got the Telstar circuit early and the President has not yet started. So suppose we take you to a baseball game in Chicago instead.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just been informed that this baseball game is being seen in Europe right now over the Telstar satellite.
The event is the 24-hour Grand Prix of Endurance at Le Mans, France. The first time that a European sports event has been carried to the United States live by satellite.
Seizing technology fresh out of the lab, sports TV was able to span the globe.
What really made Wide World of Sports possible was 2 inventions. One was jet airplanes, and the other was videotape.
Introduced in 1956, videotape was revolutionary. Now you could record an event and immediately play it back. In 1961, at a football game between Boston College and Syracuse, ABC used a modified tape machine to run the first slow-motion replay.
And when we played that back at halftime, even though it was totally primitive, you could see the future.
The future arrived in 1963 at the Army-Navy game. CBS director Tony Verna used the first instant replay with Lindsey Nelson as announcer.
In the cab on the way to the stadium, Tony said to me, "Oh, by the way, I've got a new gadget I've been working on, and I might use it today, and if I do, you'll have to explain it, so let me tell you about it." I said, "Tell me about it."
And then I broke it on him that I'm actually going to show a play right after we saw a play, and preferably a touchdown. And Lindsey looked over to me and said, "You're going to do what?"
Verna keyed on Navy's Roger Staubach, but when Army quarterback Rollie Stishway scored, viewers saw first Stishway scoring again.
The tape was re-racked, and at that time I hit Lindsey's button on his ear, and I said, "Lindsey, we've got it. Go."
And I said, "There he is. He's into the end zone for a touchdown." That's the one you saw before. And in my ear, Tony said, "What do you know? It works." From that moment on, coverage of sports events, news events, and everything else changed.
The slow-motion replay became the super slow-motion replay, magnificently recapturing a part of the present we may have missed.
Never hits the ground, it hits his hip. What a sensational catch. That's a touchdown, folks.
She just looks the same. She's smiling. That's where she knew she was pulling away.
Looked good early.
I'll tell you, it looks like a high tag to me. The ball's
like he's safe.
Looks like he's safe. Yes,
oh, yeah.
High. Yeah, he's safe.
Oh, yeah.
Throwing in the end zone.
And a ground ball. Quickly, there is a fair ball. It's Clyde Buckner. The Knights will win the ball game.
He's in trouble. Lawrence Taylor, number 56, right there. Carson is number 53. But it's Taylor over Carson, slamming, and you see the right knee, the right foot. He could have heard a snap.
The National Football League came to us at NBC and said, "We should like you to develop something for the officials. We want to hear the officials, not only on television, but we want to hear them in the stands."
Personal foul. I'll pick this up on number 99 of the defense. After he tackled the quarterback, he's giving them business down there. That's a 15-yard penalty.
The importance of sound is often overlooked. Sometimes what we see is less important than what we hear.
They want it now, they got to go get it, but let's go.
And now we can eavesdrop on all manner of conversations.
Accelerate through that board and hold it. Okay? Let's try Isaac Newton drop you out of the air. Lafitte, can you hear me? Yes, sir. Can you tell me what's in your mind right now? You finally won the Derby.
I tell you, I can't believe it.
Wide right, 541 on one. Ready?
Mary, this is Bryant Gumbel upstairs. Can you hear me?
I can, and I'm trying to catch up to my swimming friends. We're having a great time down here.
You look it. If it gets around to it and they're hitting D's, 9, we're going to block this line, okay, and stay over there.
Kevin, this is Sam Posey. Your thoughts now with just 3 laps to go?
I'm kind of busy right now, Sam. I'll talk to you afterwards.
Fair enough, and good luck to you.
The following NBC sports program is brought to you in living color.
Today's colorful computer-generated graphics contrast sharply with yesteryear's simpler designs.
Today, they got off to a flying non-conference start, beating Syracuse 41-20.
And in '83, they were 57% running, 43% passing.
This man led the play through. None of the linemen pull out to lead the play.
Like, this is a father bucket, this is a mother bucket, and since the last game, they had a baby bucket.
The gizmos are entertaining, but the camera remains TV's most powerful tool. Baseball first resisted a center field camera, fearing fans would stay home.
It was such an improvement that, number one, the baseball people, some of them, thought that it made our telecast too good, and that it would keep people from coming to the ballpark and watch on television. The other one was we started to go in with telephoto lenses on the catcher, and you could see his signals. And they were feared that the opposing team would get him, and there was quite a thought about that, but they finally said okay.
Ever since, producers and directors have been searching for the ultimate camera position, the most unusual angle, the most compelling point of view. Now watch. The cumbersome early cameras were limiting, so TV engineers eventually developed smaller, portable versions.
You're looking at the first handheld, completely portable color television camera to be used by any television network. It's called the Scrambler.
Running in the cold and the dark of Mexico City, in the breathless air, winning the decathlon.
At the 1968 Summer Olympics, America's Bill Toomey finally shook Germany's Kurt Bendlin after an agonizing 2-day competition, and an early portable color camera captured a poignant moment.
And there it was about 9 o'clock at night in this dark stadium, and there was this handheld camera. Took a picture of the two of them in total embrace with sweat. A picture that you could never get from the stands.
This picture needs no words.
In 1959, director Frank Cherkinian saw an airplane photo of the Orange Bowl and got an idea.
And then I went to Bill McPhail, who was president of CBS Sports, and I said, Bill, I want to put a camera in a Goodyear blimp for the Orange Bowl game. He said, you want to put a camera in a blimp for 30 seconds for $3,000? I said, I don't know, could be great. And it's been droning about up there ever since.
With longer zoom lenses, the best seat in the house moved closer, really close, allowing us to see that athletes have many faces. Freed from umbilical cords, cameras moved the viewer from the stands to the playing field, so that we could almost taste the action and nearly touch it.
With the feet, next the bar moving.
Going to take a look now through the mask of umpire Frank Rizzo. There's the shot. He upturns to look at it, so obviously he pans for us.
Looks like Talladega. Yeah. Oh, look how close he gets.
And here comes Waltrip back in again. Hold the ball, don't want to go anywhere. This is just too good to miss. Here's Darrell Waltrip down on the inside, challenging. He's coming up. He's going for the lead. Remarkable.
At the 1975 World Series, NBC's Harry Coyle had a camera peering out of Fenway Park's left field wall. That unusual location and a pesky rat led to a historic television moment.
This was at the plate. The cameraman called and said, you know, I have a little problem here because there was a rat. Because this was in a scoreboard down with dirt flooring. And there was a rat about 6 foot away. And at that point, Fisk hit the home run. Well, between he looking at the rack and the fact that it was misty and the ball went out of sight, he stayed with Fisk and got the beautiful shot.
How many steps does he take? One. He waits to see it. Get over. Get over. He knew it. There it is.
Now directors began to focus on the effect of an action, on the reaction. We were now able to see momentary glimpses inside the human heart and soul, moments unique to sports.
Not so very long ago, a sports editor at a large daily newspaper insisted his reporters begin carrying portable television sets to the events they covered. This was right after NBC's replay of Carlton Fisk's Dance of Joy in the 1975 World Series. Since television could so often capture the essence of a moment with a single replay, in that editor's mind, it was now something to be included in every reporter's toolbox, along with pen and pad and typewriter. Sports television has long been used as a testing ground for new television technology, replays, handheld cameras, live satellite transmissions, all of them developments immediately embraced by sports TV. But along with the bright ideas, sports has also been the venue for a fair number of noble failures. That, however, has not often been the experience of one of the most polished and thorough commentators in sports TV, Brent Musburger.
Because of sports television, we have been able to witness the extraordinary athletic events of the last 40 years. There have been 15 Olympics, 25 Super Bowls, 45 World Series. But those great events represent only a portion of sports history. Other events we remember for a different kind of uniqueness, a sense that what was taking place before our eyes seemed a little out of bounds. TV critics called them trash sports, but many were critical hits with viewers at home.
What you're going to see here is literally a sports event like none that has ever occurred before. The meeting of the superstars at the summit, you might say.
Great athletes competing against each other in sports other than the ones that they participate in normally is a valid enough concept. And I am not a big fan of superstars. In fact, I found it hard to watch most of the time we had it on. But I never found it to be trash.
Look at Joe Frazier. He just got to the other end of the pool, but he's going to come back.
The superstars had moments of genuine competition, but boxer Joe Frazier nearly drowning was not one of them.
He isn't kidding.
So 40 yards and 400 pounds of refrigerator separate these men from the big payoff. Look how awkward those refrigerators are. You've got to get it positioned just right on the small of the back.
It could alter the face of motorsports forever. A great taxi cab challenge. 20 cabbies from 19 cities throughout the United States about to do battle for the first time to decide who is the greatest cabbie of them all.
As you can see, that weight is a big advantage. Also, the size of the feet makes a difference. Cleve Dean should be great at this in a little while, but see, Don wears a 15.
It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's America's newest superhero, the human fly. What a marvelous way to spend a Saturday afternoon in the sunshine.
There was a millimeter out if it was out. He couldn't have possibly seen that.
That is not a member of the Detroit ground crew. That's starting pitcher Mark Friedrich, who pats the mound. He manicures the mound before each inning.
Tell me what I said to abuse you.
Look at him. Talking to that ball. Boy, this guy's higher than a kite.
You quit drinking in the back, all right?
In Sports Challenge, athletes were sometimes quizzed about incidents from their own past. One episode caught former Cowboy quarterback Don Meredith in the act out of bounds.
Now
Now watch the Dallas bench closely. Barnes clear sailing for 102 yards, but he just does elude a couple of foot tackles by one, Don Meredith, there, and also Jerry Tubbs, but Barnes able to skip by them and go 102 yards for a touchdown.
That's how you stay in the ball game even if you're on the sidelines. The other man, in case you didn't hear, was Jerry Tubbs. Do you remember doing that?
You know, I really don't. I hope Jeff and Hazel are not looking at this. They'd really be upset with me.
Del Bauer Jr. needs a strike in 7 for all the money.
But that Koufax, when he's got his curveball working, he's got as fine a curveball as any man I ever saw in my life. He shocks you. He met you up there, and you look at it, and you see it come up, and what does it do? I just do it. Whoop, and they say, oop, and then they say, what? And then they go back, and it looks like they're in a rocket chair, don't it? You know, they say, oh, I like it. No, I don't. Yes, I like it. No, I don't.
An announcer can become a fan of the moment, bubbling with enthusiasm.
Near the wall. Oh, what a catch he made!
Chris Schinkel remembers a game from the early 60s in which he was swept away by the athleticism and the wardrobe of giant receiver Del Schaffner.
Just before he caught it, he put a move on the defensive halfback named Claude Crabb, Washington Redskin defensive halfback. And in my excitement after Del caught the pass and went in for the touchdown, I said, Del Schaffner has just faked Claude Crabb out of his jock. About 3 days later, I got a letter from the president of the Wilson Sporting Goods Company who, a very simple letter, terse, said, Dear Chris, the correct nomenclature is athletic supporter. So I wrote him back and I said, Dear sir, how should I know? I never wore one.
This is the Redskin dressing room.
Yes, what is it?
Hi, Pat Summerall. Is Coach Allen here?
Oh, you're not Pat Summerall. I know you're not Summerall.
Well, yes, I am, too.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Right there is a vivid picturization of the excitement at touchdown.
And they're #1 in the nation.
Like a telethon, a Super Bowl tests a viewer's endurance. So NBC, in the interest of sanity and a little publicity, scheduled something called the Silent Minute during the pregame show for Super Bowl 20.
Why not have a minute during the course of the Super Bowl where everyone could run at halftime, could run to the restroom or go to the refrigerator, whatever.
It might be a good idea to pause here for a breather amid the pregame buildup. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you right after this brief intermission.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
It is interesting how something as simple as that would snowball in terms of interest.
In fact, the highest rated minute of the first hour of that pregame show was those 60 seconds of blank screen.
I went to the hospital. Why you think I'm me? I went to the hospital. Why you think I'm me? Sit down, Joe. Why you think I'm me? Sit down, Joe. Huh? Sit down quick. Why you think I'm me? So the brothers are here. You this too? No. Sit down quick, Joe.
Well, we're having a scene, as you can see, and it's hard to tell whether it's clowning or for real between the two fighters.
At 7 o'clock last night, NBC was carrying the pro game between the New York Jets and the Oakland Raiders. There was 65 seconds of playing time left. At 7, NBC had scheduled a 2-hour special program for children, a dramatization of Heidi. It was decided Heidi should wait a couple of minutes until the game was over. But somehow that decision never reached those who were pushing the buttons.
Just before 7, NBC executive producer Scotty Connell picked up the phone to tell those button pushers to keep the game on.
I could not get through to New York. I couldn't get a ring, I couldn't get anything. And I tried this for 2 or 3 minutes. Obviously, there was something wrong with the phones.
So the football game was cut off the air a minute before it ended, and Heidi was started. The football fans erupted. There were 10,000 phone calls of complaint to New York NBC alone. So many, the telephone switchboards blew out their fuses.
Had my briefcase, put my papers and everything. I was walking up the stairs out of the booth in the old Oakland Coliseum, and I heard somebody yell, the floor manager, Gowdy, Gowdy, get back here.
NBC apologized for the error, but by then, Oakland had scored 2 touchdowns in the last minute, had beaten New York. The game was over. The fans who missed it could not be consoled.
So I said, well, what can we do about it? They said, we want you to redo the touchdown. Well, I said, you know, it could never be as exciting as it was live.
Well, here is the last minute as it would have been seen last night if somebody at NBC had got the word.
Harmonica to Charlie Smith. Smith is hitting, and he scores! What a game! Earl Presley fumbling it around. He fumbles the ball, and Oakland has it for a touchdown. Oakland has scored 2 touchdowns in 9 seconds. And that's it. The final score, Oakland 43, New York 32. We're still trying to find out who did what, but they've got that red phone back there now, like the president's phone in all the broadcast control studios, and nobody cuts out of the game anymore.
Well, the Heidi game was an encouraging lesson for NBC in at least one respect. The teams competing that night, the New York Jets and Oakland Raiders, were part of the upstart Are We Ready for Primetime American Football League. And after the outcry on November 17th, 1968, NBC realized that the AFL had clearly come of age. 2 months later at Super Bowl III, that was reaffirmed as Joe Namath's AFL Jets shocked the heavily favored NFL Colts. We've just watched some of the moments no sports TV executive would like to live through again. There are other days, however, that are gladly replayed over and over again. These are the events which, because of their power and drama, serve as reference points in many of our lives. Such is the case for a broadcaster raised in Comac, Long Island, who was baptized a Yankees fan, Bob Costas.
Recalling the great moments, it's a little like having an old calendar in your head. When you see one, you page back, remember a day or a night. You remember the season and the weather. Sometimes you remember who you were with. That's the lasting power of the moments that give you chills and thrills. There was the young center fielder for the New York Giants, going back, way back, tracking that ball with such easy speed.
Willie Mays just brought this crowd to its feet with a catch which must have been an optical illusion to a lot of people.
I remember the announcer who made rooting for the Celtics seem like a consuming passion and a civic duty, and the player who seized a great moment and stole away a playoff. And of course, there was the brash quarterback who claimed he could work miracles, while most of the world just laughed.
The Jets beating the Baltimore Colts 16-7 gives the AFL the first Super Bowl championship.
These milestone events in sports history are brief, shining moments, each unique in its plot and development and quality of magic.
Now Norwood tries to kick his longest ever on grass, 47 yards. 8 seconds left. No good. Wide right.
The night before, I said to myself, what if he hits a home run? How are you going to call it? I said, I'm just going to do it like the way I call home runs now. Aaron in his earlier days used to hit more to right center than the left. Oh, there's a long dive. Balls are deep, deep. It is gone. He did it. He did it. Henry Aaron is the all-time home run leader now.
The time, 18. Shot, Jordan, Michael Jordan, 14 seconds. Ground. Look for Sleepy Floyd. Oh, he threw it to the wrong man. He threw it to Worthy. It's over. It's over. Fred Brown, somehow or another, threw the ball into the hands of James Worthy.
Jim, if she hits, you won't believe that she's the second best on her team. Back me right to the other bar.
Has that been done before by a girl?
Never. Not by any human that I know of. Look at that. And she's second best? I don't believe it.
This then is a historic performance you're watching right now in gymnastics.
She's Kathy Rigby's size. Oh, my. Wow.
The Oakland Raiders have taken a 7-6 lead. It's down to one big play. 4th down and 10 yards to go. Bradshaw running out of the pocket, looking for somebody to throw to.
How about the Vic Wertz catch in the World Series? Was that the greatest catch you ever made?
Well, I don't think so, Joe. I feel that I had a chance to catch the ball, but a lot of people said, gee, that was the best catch he ever made, so I didn't argue with him.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back.
UCLA must gamble. They must press. They're 2 points down with 12 seconds to go. Hayes with the ball. It's the Hound and the Dogs. 3 seconds. The Houston Cougars have snapped UCLA's 47-game winning streak and pandemonium at the Astrodome.
It was a monumental game. It was a forebearer to the incredible popularity of college basketball on television.
15-40. 2 championship points.
Know what's going through his mind right at this moment. It looks like a marvelous jump. Fantastic jump, you can tell by the reaction of Bob Beamon. Incredible, 29 feet, 2.5 inches on his first jump. He just collapsed under the tension and the realization he was the first man over 28 feet, the first man over 29 feet, and incredible. 29 feet, 2.5 inches.
I'll never forget the sight of the courage of Willis Reed helping the Knicks win, doing it, playing on one leg.
I think we see Willis coming out. There he comes right now. 6'10" from Grambling. The captain of the Knicks, the most valuable player of the NBA. And Reed now is outside. There's his second shot. He is 2 for 2. Willis Reed. Look at him limp. It appears that Reed twisted that leg on that last exchange. He can't move at all. Look at Willis Reed. 3, 2, 1. We have a new NBA champion. 24 long years.
Before the ninth, I had said to Mantle, wouldn't it be something if I got a no-hitter? He just looked at me as if I was crazy and moved away. I don't think I ever felt more alone in my life.
And now there is 1 strike left.
Wearing number 15, the greatest downhiller, many people say, of all time.
We did that call after the event because we couldn't do it live. We did not have the cameras to cover top to bottom.
Bernard Bruce sitting at the bottom of first base. Harper almost went down, Frank.
Roger said he's on the edge. If he leaves me, he is on the edge of disaster.
He's all over this mountain. 2 tenths he has to make up on the lower part of the mountain. Franz Palmer is really going to have to move if he's going to catch Lucy. He's almost out of the hay bale.
So we wound up doing the call some 6 hours after the event.
Bruce is caught on the left, Palmer on the right. Palmer has done it. This crowd has gone crazy. Franz Palmer has overtaken Bernard Bruce. An incredible race.
Did you see the punch? Did you see it? Now Walcott has gotten information that Liston was down for a count of 10 and more. So the fight is over and Muhammad Ali is still the champion in a scene of bedlam, chaos, and confusion.
Westfall rolled it in front. Sanderson tried a shot that was wide and Keenan cleared it but not out. Bobby Orr behind the net to Sanderson. Orr! Bobby Orr! Scores in the Boston Bruins! The Bruins will Stanley Cup as Bobby Orr, their 22-year-old sensation, scores after 40 seconds of overtime.
10 seconds, 9, 8. Here's the kick by Steve Myra. Good. The game is tied, and we're about to have the first sudden-death overtime in the history of pro football. United to Amici. Amici powers in. The Colts win it. They're the NFL champions.
This was the most magnificent thoroughbred I'd ever seen. Most beautiful. It had charisma.
It's a head for Ruffian. Foolish Pleasure is outside and holding right steady with her. Now we're coming up to the first quarter of a mile, and it'll tell about this pace. It is Foolish Pleasure going by set. Ruffian has broken down. Ruffian has broken down on the backstretch. This race is over.
There was a huge gasp in the crowd. And your first thought is, oh my God, they're going to have to kill her. And the second thought was, why did we have to do this?
This is for sole possession of the lead.
Maybe. Yes, sir!
I think the most emotional moment that I can remember in my years in sports broadcasting would have to be the 1986 Masters and the walk up the 18th fairway by Jack Nicklaus with his son caddying when no one expected him to win, no one thought he had a chance. Everybody, I think, connected with the broadcast would agree with me that that's the most emotional thing we've ever been through.
What a round. What a player. Beautiful.
Pele with a hard shot into the goal. Pele has scored in his last half for the Cosmos. And this is what today is all about. Look at it, all over it.
The music is Auld Lang Syne, but it isn't New Year's Eve because there's no tomorrow in the career of Pele.
So I remember working in a very intense state of concentration, and there was a voice that kept saying, stay with it, don't get caught up in this. Whatever you say here at the end, just make sure it's not silly or ridiculous. And the word that came into my mind was miraculous.
5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
As it turns out, it was a fortunate thing for me to have said it, but something that I had no conception of at the time. There are very few sports events that can transcend sport, and this is clearly, as far as I can tell, #1 in our lifetime.
I was there that night, and I said to myself, truly, anything can happen in sports. Sports TV united our country on that occasion, as it has done so often before and since. The World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics. Through TV, we watch them and get a chance to be a community. Because the essence of sports, with its action and humanity and pageantry, is so immediately understood. When I started in the business, right after World War II, I never imagined how big it would get, how it would captivate people, and the enormous amounts of money that would be involved. And I couldn't imagine back then what sports TV would mean in my life. As we come to our final moments, HBO would like to thank ABC, NBC, and CBS for their cooperation. And now for Jim McKay, Pat Summerall, Brent Musburger, Jim Lampley, and Bob Costas. And for all those men and women who have brought you the sights and sounds of a half-century of sports television, this is the cowboy, Kurt Gowdy, saying so long.
This is Mel Allen saying thank you and good night from Milwaukee.
There's a long try. That one is going way up. It is off the roof.
27-yard kick. Here it is. It's good.
Bill Mills fights his way through, and he wins it, breaking the Olympic record.
That winds it up, ladies and gentlemen, from Denver. Bud Palmer saying so long. Thanks for watching.
What a performance. Peggy Fleming. Jim Cannon leading the race. Ryan. Oh, he fell down. Jim Ryan is down the track. His effort may be over. Tagging is Harrelson. Will he gamble? He's coming. Here's the throw. And he is off at home plate.
And fans, we'll see you on the Falstaff Game of the Week. So long, everybody. So long, everybody.
Four in a row for Navratilova. Stay back. Here comes the rush. He sidesteps. Can he throw? He can. The ball flipped forward as well. It's a wild scramble. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most absolutely impossible dream of a play. Theo hits him. He slides. Hitting the wall. They're out of it.
Now this red ball I would say, and I hope you have a good time.
1 second on the clock.
The 1983 French Open, Yannick Noah.
Mark Spitz has 7 gold medals. He's won everything that he had hoped to win.
There's Rogers at the outside, pitching back to Gardner. And Gardner's got no place to go and no one to pitch it to. And he's still in his feet. Game's not over yet. And here's another man. Flag is down. A flag is down. Kevin Boone takes it into the end zone. We have chaos.
I hope you'll be with us next Sunday night along about this same time when we try to bring some more stars into your home, sports stars of every kind of sport. And if you enjoyed it tonight, I think you will be. Anyways, along about this same time, if you'll be there, we'll be here, and we'll see you all over again. Until then, this is Bill Stern saying good night.
This has been a presentation of HBO Sports, the network of champions.